You are listening to a Slaffterhouse production. Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 5 of the Josh vs. Josh podcast. I am your moderator, Travis Wilson, along with
Josh Duclos
and
Josh Weitzel.
And today we are going to be talking about the 2009 film District 9. Before we start, let's just get a feel for how you guys feel about the movie. Ducky?
My opinion, the film is not that great. And I feel like it's very, like another sci-fi film that came out the same year, Avatar. I think there's a lot of similarities between the two, where everyone said that they were interesting and original, but if you really look at the film, they're both bland, they're both boring, they both rely too much on action, and they don't really hold much water, especially 7 years after they've come out now, 7-8 years after they come out now, they even less hold water, and they're even less interesting today than they were in 2009. So I'm not a big fan of it. There are some great things that came from District 9, like Shalto is amazing in the film, but other than that, the film is just not original, not interesting. And whenever it tries to say something important, it's kind of ruined by how poorly, acted the film is or poorly written the film is.
What?
And yeah, I said it.
Poorly acted.
Except for Shalto. Shalto's great. But everyone else, all the villain characters are so mustache twirly villainy that it's almost laughable. How over the top, bad guys they are in that movie. How over the top villain they are. It's just no.
I disagree.
Okay, well, Josh, since we're here, obviously you disagree with what Ducky's saying. How did you feel about the film overall?
I think it's great. I think it's a lot of fun. I think it's a really original film with some very interesting social commentary, especially if you're from South Africa. And I think the visual effects are fantastic. I don't feel like it relies too heavily on action because, pretty much the whole conflict is driven by its characters. And I think that's really awesome because you don't see a lot of action movies like that nowadays. So yeah, I think it's a great movie. If you're gonna compare it to Avatar, I think Avatar is just might have made a lot of might have made a lot of money, but it's kind of a bust in the long term. I think. I mean, does anyone actually give a shit about the 4 or 5 sequels that are gonna come out in the next few years? I mean, they've been the second one was supposed to come out last year, 2 years ago or something like that, and it never happened. I mean, you're really talking about apples and oranges. I mean, at the time that District 9 came out, I hadn't really seen anything quite like it. And watching it now, I think it's still fantastic. It's not perfect film, but there aren't many of those. So, yeah, I think it's a pretty good science fiction film. I think it's a lot of fun. I definitely enjoyed watching it when I did a couple weeks ago, just as much as I did in the theater for the first time. So I think it's a great movie.
I think it's crazy that you say that you can't compare these two movies, even though they came out months apart from each other, and they both use alien races as a way to talk about prejudice and racism. And it's crazy to say that you can't compare the two. I mean, they're both very similar. They're both visual effect heavy. They both use aliens for its message, and it's just a generic message of racism is bad. When you have a film like Schindler's List, where yes, it's a film about the Holocaust, but what makes that film so great is it's about this character fighting against the genocide. Well, these films, especially District 9, it seems like the main character doesn't care at all. He only cares about his own skin throughout the entire movie. He said, at the very beginning of the film, he's totally part of the whole, I hate pawns, I hate the aliens. where there's literally a scene where they kill like 50 babies, and he's talking about, oh, you hear that popping? That's their heads popping. And then literally 10 minutes later going, oh, I won't kill prawns. I can't kill him. I'll shoot a pig. And it's just, and then near the end of the film, he changes again when the guy goes, oh, I'll be back in 3 years. And he goes, oh, I can't wait 3 years. So he betrays him. And then 10 minutes later, he goes, oh, I am on your side again. It's just back and forth, back and forth. It is just, no, it's not good writing.
Journey.
It's not good writing, especially with the main character.
It's a hero's journey. It's a hero's journey.
To keep switching back and forth against... What do you mean by it's a hero's journey, though?
I mean, you're just kind of like cherry picking various, plot points. And I think you need to look at the larger picture. Because he does start the film out as, being a guy who, he really likes his job, but he's just kind of like this, what's the word? Like bumbling office idiot who just kind of gets, he gets like his big break and he fucks it up royally. And, because of that, and the decisions that he makes, he winds up being a hero, and he helps save, this alien race. Maybe not immediately, but in the long term. But I think a lot of the choices that he makes come from a lot of internal conflict. The guy tells him 3 years. How would you feel if someone told you like, oh yeah, like I can help you out, but you need to help me first. And then later, after you've gone to hell and back, he tells you, yeah, it's going to be a little bit longer than I promised. It's going to be 3 fucking years. What would you do? You'd be understandably upset.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And then he reaches a point where, he realizes, man, I really shouldn't have done what I did. And instead of continuing to be a whiny little bitch about it, he goes back and, helps him out. He saves him. He saves all of them. But I think a lot of that has to do with, his journey, which I think is probably one of the most interesting parts in the whole movie. Is just I think he's a great character, and I think he's really well written. He's very believable. I think he's fantastic. And I do sort of see a little bit of the Avatar comparison now, but I still think there's a bit of a larger difference. I mean, Avatar is really easy to compare to Pocahontas, because the story beats are way closer to that than anything like Pocahontas is to District 9, I guess. But I think the fact that they're, aliens and effects heavy I think it's selling District 9 and Avatar a little bit short. I mean, if you look at something like Avatar, like that movie is like 85% visual effects, probably closer to 90. I mean, I guarantee you that like the vast majority of that, I mean, like that whole movie was done like on a soundstage. And it's all just done with like computers. And when you walk out of that movie, you're like, wow, that movie was visually beautiful. Every frame is like a gorgeous science fiction painting. It's so miraculous and lovely and detailed and so intricately woven together. And that's what drives the story. And that's what makes everything so interesting, because I remember more about the visuals in that movie than the actual story. With District 9, I compliment the visuals because they made that whole movie for like dirt cheap by comparison to what other movies that look like that made. I mean, I think they made District 9 on like, I don't know, something like 30 million,
30.
which for a movie like that is pretty cheap. And even though they do spend a fair amount of time with the prawns, they do spend a fair amount of time outside of that. And a lot of that, they use that stuff to set up the world building and everything like that. But District 9 feels much more authentic, and characters much more relatable, I think, than an Avatar, because it's been a few years since I've seen a couple years since I've seen Avatar, and even after watching it again for the first time since seeing it in theaters, um, I didn't really care that much about the story. It was really mostly just about the visuals for me. But as far as District 9 goes, I think, for me, the characters in the story are what really grabbed me in that one. And I think that's just what makes it a better film. I mean, if all you remember about the movie is how pretty it looks, then you know, how does that stand up? Like years from now, you say like, oh yeah, that was a really pretty movie. But in the long term, I think the movies that are remembered are the ones that are, like District 9. I think the only problem is District 9. I don't remember how much money it made at the box office. But it launched Neil Blomkamp's career, and that hasn't really
No.
gone anywhere, which is a shame because I was really looking forward to Elysium, and I didn't like that very much, and I hated Chappie. And
I thought Chappie was better than Elysium, but it still wasn't that great.
I thought Chappie was a piece of garbage. We should talk about that one. I thought Chappie sucked.
I mean, they're basically the same movie as District 9, with looks and the type of weapons. It's basically the same movie. I'm not talking about like the plot, like the world and all that. It's basically the same movie.
But what do you mean by if you're telling me that the plot is different? How is it basically the same movie? Just in the way that it looks?
Well, the way it looks, the
style.
Neil Blomkamp, like he has fingerprints all over everything.
Well, sure, yeah, he's a lot of his own stuff. I don't know if you could say they're basically the same movie.
I mean, I guess to each their own. I mean, because I don't think District 9's that great of a movie to begin with, and I don't think his other films are that great at all either. And so to me, they're basically the same movie. There's not much of a difference between the three. Like, if anyone goes, like, show me a Neil movie, I wouldn't say, oh, watch District 9. I'm like, well, you could watch, Chappie or Elysium. Because none of them are really that great, and they all showcase his problems and his strengths to, just as well as District 9 would.
But why would you describe them as them all being the same movie?
Well, because I don't think they're interchangeable. There's not one that, the story's really good. Well, for all three of them, the story's not that great. And then all three of them, the visual effects are pretty good.
The way you're describing this to me, it sounds like you're telling me that if a movie is not good, then it means that they're all pretty much the same movie. So every single shitty movie in the history of the world is all pretty much just the same movie because it's not good.
What I'm getting with,
I really don't understand the way you're phrasing this.
What I'm getting with is that Neil Blomkamp is his films, which there's good things and bad things that come with this. They're the exact same movie. He has a really strong voice, but with all three of his films, they all have the exact same weaknesses and they have all the exact same strengths. They all have really good visual effects and production design. They all three have really bad acting and really bad story. Whenever they try to say something deep about a really impactful message about something, it just comes off as really forced and bland. And they all end with climactic action scenes that are really violent for no reason. Where really just characters get hit by a little thing, they just explode into a giant balloon of blood. Like, all three of them do that. And
I think
go.
If you want, I disagree with you on parts of that. If you want to talk about the violence in these movies, I just think that's him exercising his I don't know, his science fiction creative muscle or whatever you want to call it. I mean, it's a science fiction movie. You can really do whatever you want. Instead of firing bullets, it shoots blasts of lightning. I mean, you see how devastating these weapons are, and that's a pretty important part of what the villains are after. They want him because they can turn him into a weapon, and you see how fucking devastating these weapons can be.
But it just becomes laughable after like the 20th body just explodes, and it sounds like a balloon popped.
It does lose a little bit of its impact, but that
the only scene in District 9 that had great violence, in my opinion, that was actually impactful was when they were giving the eviction notice to everyone, and the alien Christopher, his friend, kind of fights back a little bit, and then that one ball guy kind of when he's injured shoots him in the head. that's the only good violent scene that actually has like some impact, because it's kind of like it's realistic enough that you can imagine a human getting shot like that, and then seeing the alien get shot like that makes you feel bad for these aliens. But then when everyone else is getting their head ripped off or popping like a balloon, it just becomes really hard to empathize with these characters. And I just feel like the message gets kind of lost, where it's like, racism is bad. They're killing them senselessly. But then when the humans are getting killed senselessly, it's supposed to be like I won't say fun, but like there's just bodies exploding. That's all it is. And there's just no impact for me. It leaves little to no impact on me. And the message just kind of falls flat because of that. Because it goes too much, especially in the last hour of the film, where it's very much just an action movie. It just does not have any impact.
It's supposed to be an action movie.
Well, I mean,
that's like the point of it.
But it's kind of like with Christopher Nolan, where like he's so busy trying to get his point across that he just gets in his own way. With this, they change it to an action movie out of nowhere, and it just becomes violence. That's all it is. Just explosions, just bodies exploding. And I don't know how I'm supposed to watch this and go and feel like this is a film about racism.
It's always been an action movie. It's always been an action movie. I mean, even from the start, like you see the aliens fighting with each other and everything like that. But I mean, it's tonally consistent across the board.
Oh, I disagree. There's almost no action in the first film. And whatever action there is, it works with the whole...
You mean the first act of the movie?
There's no action in that. That's the documentary style part of the movie.
It's not documentary style throughout the entire...
Yeah, it's like that for the first 20 minutes of the movie.
Well, because they do that to set up the story.
Which is really well done. I will give the film that credit.
Still lots of grim, violent images.
Well, yes, but I'm not talking about violent imagery. I'm talking about action. And I think there's a big difference between the two. In the first hour of the film, there's very little action, but there's violent imagery, and it works really well. And then for the second half of the film, it's action, where the imagery doesn't leave an impact. It doesn't seem violent because everything's violent. There's no juxtaposition with anything, because it's always looked crappy. There's always, like it just, by a certain point, after, like I said, after like the 10th body explodes, you just become so desensitized to it. There was never a moment in the second half of the film that came close to the Christopher's friend getting shot in the head. That actually does leave an impact, at least for me, anyways. And the rest of the film it's just an action movie. There's some really cool moments in the action stuff, but I just feel like the theme and the message of the film is totally lost in that action.
What do you think the theme of the movie is?
Well,
what do you think the theme of the movie is?
Well, I mean, maybe not with theme, but with going the whole, the message about apartheid, about
What do you think that is?
What do you mean?
What do you think it's trying to say about apartheid?
Well, that's bad, and that, and especially in the beginning where they show people like African Americans being, what do you call it, racist and bigot to the aliens, is that it's just saying how people can easily pick a scapegoats, and how easily people can hate other, races or species without little to no knowledge about them, and that, that fear can let me see here.
I can't see you.
That's okay. I'm going to fix it in a second. I'm just trying to figure
it. Sorry.
No, it's just saying how people can easily, hate another group of things they don't understand. And then the second half of the film, it just turns into an action movie where I think it just kind of loses that whole thing.
I don't think it loses any of that. I just think all the plot, the story of the film and all the characters converge, and I think that given with how the rest of the story is unfolded, there has to be bloodshed at the end of that story. I don't see these characters just being like, hey, let's talk about our problems.
Well, I mean,
because they've broken into this facility, and they're doing this because they, when he makes the choice, he's when he says, hey, like, let's, I'll help you break in there. He's doing that for personal gain. And he's doing that, because he's like, I'm going to go and change back. And by the end of the film, he's like, no, I will help you. And, he's accepted his own fate. And, but also, the other people, the villains, aren't quite as, I guess they're not quite as forgiving, or whatever word you want to say. So, I mean, they end up, they respond to violence with more violence, and they can't just say like, hey, let's, talk about this. Like, everything in the story reaches its logical conclusion, and it works for me. And the fact that it is, violent at the end, I mean, you are forgetting that it is an action movie. It doesn't pretend to be anything else. I mean, when you watch, even in the documentary opening, you do see violent images, and it sets up, oh, this is going to be a violent film. This is going to be a violent conflict when they're walking through the district. You see a lot of violent shit happening. It doesn't really mask itself to be anything that it's not. And I think that the only difference is that, once you get through, like, at whatever point, Copley's character meets up with Christopher, that's just at the point where the rest of the story, begins to ramp up. And that's when, the choices that he makes result in violence. And I don't think that he's just like, it's not like he's like a crazy person who's just like, yeah, let's go kill some motherfuckers. It's just like, we need to do this. This is something that we have to do to save to save me, and, to save your people. So I don't think, in terms of violence, I don't have any kind of issue with it at all. Well, because it works, it makes sense, and tonally the story is consistent. The film is consistent across the 2 hours, or hour 45, or however long it is.
Well, I think it's kind of weird where your first half of the film is showing like the horribleness, the consequences, and how easy people just are killing people they don't understand. And then for the second half of the film to have your main characters do that as well just seems weird to me. Like, when they first break into the headquarters, they're not killing anyone until that one guy shoots at him, and then he fires back, and then he pops like a balloon. And then the Christopher alien guy is like, hey, I thought you said we weren't going to kill anyone. And then Shelter goes, oh, well, he shot at me, which is like a funny moment. But then from there on out, the entire movie, they were just, I mean, at least Shelto is. I don't know if the alien ever kills anyone, but he's just, killing people left and right. And it just seems weird that were the first hour of the film, anytime there was violence, it wasn't supposed to be fun. It was like, it was violent. It was disturbing. It made you empathize with these aliens. While in the second half of the film, I guess you could say, like, since it's all the humans that did horrible things to the aliens, it's fine that they're exploding. But it seems weird where, like, you're doing the exact same thing as the villain, as the bad guys in the movie, to achieve a different end. It just seems like a weird thing. Like,
you can
go.
Here's the difference, though. The aliens, the prawns, are living in a slum.
Mm-hmm.
They don't really have much in the way of anything. They're refugees. They're struggling to survive. They have nothing. They have no agency. I mean, and these people just barge into their homes and kick their asses around, and just completely upend their entire lives, just because it's all like a business thing to them, or all because they have weapons and they're kidnapping and experimenting on people, and they're on the aliens, and they're doing all these incredibly awful things. It makes sense for the aliens to get fucking pissed off and to fight back, because the humans don't really see them as they don't see them as creatures. I keep thinking I need to say that, they don't see them as humans, but they're not humans. Mm-hmm. I mean, they don't see them as beings that can feel, or that have any sort of emotion. um, even though they are. Um, so, I mean, you have to think about how they must feel about that. And then uh, even Copley's character is like that in the beginning of the film. He doesn't really see them as creatures with feelings. Um, and then by the end of the film, he does, because he realizes that they are more human, for the lack of a better term. And because of that, that's when fighting instead of fighting the aliens, um, he fights for them, in an attempt to give them back some kind of control over their lives, and to give them back some of the agency that they never really had. Um, and I think that's really important to consider, because you're just implying um, that he's just fighting because he likes to, or he's contradicting his own morals. But you forget that he's changed, not just emotionally, but physically too. Um, so he's about to become one of them. And yeah, that largely factors into, how he's changed as a person, but he sees all of like the experimentation that they've done on them in the bottom of that laboratory, and it's legitimately terrifying. And he's been experimented on himself, and they're literally about to vivisect him, for profit, um, and he somehow manages to escape that. So after having gone through all of that shit, it's kind of hard not to be pissed off at the humans. And he says, you know what? No, I need to go help these people. I need to go help these creatures. Um, I'm about to be turned into one of them, but I still need to help them and do everything I can in my power to help save them and give them back their lives, and eventually get them the fuck off this planet where they don't belong. Um, and so because of that, um, that's why the violence and the chaos at the end of the film makes sense, because the humans are all in this for profit. They're in it to sell weapons, and to do generally terrible things. Um, and that's why the end of the film makes sense to me. That's why he goes through that character change where he does decide that killing these other humans is an acceptable way to deal with this problem, because if it's at this point, it's a killer be killed situation. Um, and he has the capacity to kind of lead this uprising, which he does, and it's awesome, because you see how far he's come as a character, and yeah, it works really, really well in the context of the rest of the story and his character change. And it's not just violence for the sake of violence like it is in, I don't know, so many other action movies or superhero movies or science fiction movies, because a lot of it's just kind of like action for the sake of action.
Wow. I mean,
And this is different.
I mean, that's how I see that second hour. It's just action. It feels weird where it's like the apartheid, all the imagery of that, all the connections to real life. Even today, like some of the themes from this film do work with, the whole immigration in Europe. Like the film still, like that first 20 minutes, like works for me. But with the second hour, where you said like, oh, they need to leave this planet because they don't belong here, that seems kind of goes against the whole theme and the whole message of this movie, where like
no,
they
but
should
they
leave.
don't belong there.
But no, I mean, isn't it that it feels like at least the beginning is that it's kind of like like people should be able to accept each other even if they are aliens, so that we shouldn't kill them, put them in concentration camps basically, and in slums, and we should treat them like people. Why it seems weird that they would have to leave our planet because they don't belong here. That seems to go against like the whole message of the movie.
Okay, here's the thing. They're aliens with a giant spaceship that's just floating and dormant. And yeah, they're here and they are refugees. And I get what it's trying to say, but it is a science fiction film. So what I assume would happen is if they were to make like a sequel or something, that they would all probably get the fuck off of Earth because of how poorly they've been treated. And I understand that that's not how it actually works with actual human refugees. I get that. But I think just for the sake of the film, you know, because the whole purpose of, you know, him getting back to the ship, it's not just he's going back wherever home, to save his people, to help them. So instead of just coming here and being like, yeah, we, live here now, he chooses, he's not just, Christopher isn't just saying like, yeah, I'll just deal with it, like so many of them are. He's making the choice to help his people and go back because he doesn't want them to stay there. He wants to bring his people home. And I assume that most other, refugees don't really want to be like stuck where they are. I just think probably most of them want to go home, even if home is, not the best place for them. But I mean, the idea of, like being, the fact that they've been like forced out of their homes, which is like the whole idea of what a refugee is. Mm-hmm. They've been forced away from their home, for whatever reason. I don't remember if they provide a lot of context for what's actually going on, as to like why they're there. I don't recall.
I mean, I can't exactly remember who says. I think it was Roger Ebert, where he said science fiction takes place in the future, but it's about today. I find it strange that they wouldn't have try to have like some sort of answer, like how the whole go away kind of thing seems like very counter. It doesn't work for how we see refugees, human refugees in real life. So I find it strange that they would give it such a weird science fiction thing where, they can just go back home. Where I feel like it would be more impactful and powerful if they were forced to stay in Africa and people would forced to live with them. And that whole journey of acceptance would be far more interesting than saying, we're just going to leave.
They still are forced to live there for like, was it like 20 some odd years?
I mean, yes, but when he leaves, he says,
are still...
I'll be back in 3 years. Meaning that there's going to be a day where, I guess that's kind of up to the viewer. Like, does he come back with an army? Does he come back and just gets out those other people? Like, what does he do? I guess it's up to you to decide. But it finds it strange where, like, it's either leave or start a war with everyone. It just doesn't have a powerful message or impact at the end, as saying like, we're forced to live here, so now we have to we have to accept each other now. And I just think that'd be a way better ending than saying, we're just going to leave or start a war with you. Which, once again, the first hour of the film has a different message than the second half of the film. And it's a total tonal shift, in my opinion.
How do you feel about... I'm curious to know how you feel about the... at the very end of the movie... when he gives his wife the flower and she says that, she knows that he's out there. Mm-hmm. She cries about, how do you feel about that?
I think it's a nice moment, but, and I really like the moment where you see the alien with like a piece of trash and he's making a flower out of it. I think that's a nice moment, but,
don't you think that's hopeful?
But don't you, I guess that is kind of hopeful, but does she know that, he's an alien, like a full-blown alien?
I'm pretty sure that she can assume that.
Because she wasn't told anything. No one was told anything.
At the very end of the film, they say this is the last documented footage of him, and you can and don't forget that what's the name of the guy? The guy who hangs out with I'm trying to remember
you mean the guy that's arrested at the end?
Wickus is Copley's character. The guy who's arrested at the end of the film, who only is there for the first maybe like half an hour or so, who's like gone and hacked the files and he's gotten and released all of this information to the public. I'm pretty sure that, the world knows that he's an alien now. And I'm pretty sure...
The film ends with them saying that he's waiting for trial. So I don't like that he's in jail and he's awaiting trial. So I don't feel like the majority of the world believe that he turned into an alien.
The information's out there.
I know, but that doesn't mean everyone believes in it, especially when the guy's still going to prison for it. It's
What?
what I mean, I don't think so. Like if everyone thought he
If
was
he's
bad.
on trial,
Yeah,
then
he's on trial.
If he's probably guilty.
Well, that's what.
Don't you think?
Wait, what do you mean? I'm saying that
Like,
nobody believes him, so that's why he is on trial.
I'm pretty sure that most people believe what's going on if they're making a documentary about it that the film is based around.
Well,
Fictional documentary.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know.
They literally say this is the last known footage of Wickus that we have, because they don't know what he looks like as a full alien. So, can't you assume, as the viewer, if you're watching, like this larger these small fractures of a documentary, wouldn't it make sense that he's a full-blown alien, and that it's clear that his wife still loves him at the very end? She's shown, that she's learned something about herself, tolerance towards her husband, towards these alien creatures who she knows, can't be all that bad anymore.
I mean, I guess you can read it as that, but it totally didn't hit me at all.
As that?
It did not. It doesn't hit me at all with that. She's not told that he's turning into an alien, and I doubt they told.
What about literally everything I just said about the documentary and the files that have been leaked?
I guess, but just because there's a documentary and this file's been leaked, that doesn't mean people are going to believe that he's an alien. Like, at all.
And then she gets a little thing, a little metal flower.
Well, I think she just thinks that he's out there somewhere. Because he is still a fugitive. They still want him. And they say he's like a terrorist. They say that he's having sex with the aliens. And they just say that he's contaminated. But they don't say that, he's turning literally into them right now. So I just don't think everyone would believe that. Unless, maybe... I don't know. Because the wife just thought, he was having sex with the aliens. That he was working with the aliens. And that's why she was like, I never want to see you again. And then, probably years later, she's forgiven him in some sort of way. And that flower,
sure,
was like his way of saying sorry. And I just don't see her thinking, well, he's an alien now. I don't see that. I mean, maybe she does, but it's not specifically stated or alluded to at all in the movie.
You don't think that the end of the film, that final shot, is hopeful in any way, shape, or form?
No, it's hopeful. I mean, but I don't know. I just feel like that little moment is nice, but compared to everything that come an hour before it, and then all the other stuff that comes with the ending, it seems like it's buried by all the other stuff. So it just doesn't leave an impact for me.
Buried by what other stuff?
Oh no, the other the gruesome violence at the end of the movie, the people popping in just the blood bags.
Okay, so going back to Schindler's List, do you believe that the hopeful ending of that film is in some way affected by the fact that he just shoots people in the head because he can? That the intense violence and nature of
but the main character doesn't do that though. Schindler doesn't kill people.
That's not what I'm saying. The whole film. No, what? Wait, so you're telling me that it's because Wickus is defending himself, and creatures with less agency than humans, creatures who are being mistreated by humans, you're saying that because he defends them in the only way that he possibly can, that leaves less of an impact? I mean, or that it's not as important that what he's doing?
But when the action is supposed to be it's where it becomes over the top as it does, and it almost becomes like a summer blockbuster. It leaves very little impact to me. With Schindler's List, there's no action in that movie, but there's so much violent imagery, and the main character does he chooses to go against them. He chooses to help the Jews. He chooses to not to profit on them anymore.
Let me ask you something now.
He was all about money, and then now he wasn't halfway through the movie.
Sure. I have a question now. Um, Still talking about violence, over the top violence. How do you feel about John Wick? You like those movies,
John
right?
Wick does not have a message about that we shouldn't be shooting each other, that we shouldn't be racist. It's just an action movie where a guy's dog and car has been stolen, so he's going to kill everyone who was a part of it. Like it doesn't try to tell you a message. It clearly knows what it is, and that's what makes that okay, in my opinion, at least. Like if it tried to say something about how violence is bad and that we shouldn't be killing each other, but then he still does it. It's
Because that's what I'm getting from you, is that you're telling me that this movie is saying that violence is. I mean, it's not. I don't think District 9 glorifies violence in any way. Are you trying to tell me that it does?
Well, I'm saying that it's weird
I'm
where
really
your
confused as to
villains,
what exactly
the
you're
bad
trying to
guys
tell
of
me.
your story, and the good guys of the story do the exact same thing. I mean, that's why Christopher is an
it's
interesting
completely
character.
different.
Because as far as I know, Christopher doesn't kill anyone. I don't remember seeing him kill anyone. I saw the movie yesterday. I'm pretty sure he doesn't kill anyone. But Shelter is killing people left and right. They're exploding into, bloodbaths and all that, and it just doesn't have an impact like where the first hour of the film is showing the horrible consequences of violence and what it can do to people. Where the second half of the film, it's kind of like, oh, well, we can only win by killing them. It just seems kind of weird to me. It's kind of like, imagine if Schindler started just killing Germans left and right at the second half of Schindler's List. It just would make no sense to me.
I feel like at this point, if I keep talking, I'm just going to start repeating myself. We've reached that point in the conversation where I don't know what else I could possibly say.
I mean, I'll go back with District 9 is trying to say a message, so that's why I can hold the violence of the second half against it. With John Wick, they're not trying to say a message of anything.
I really the John Wick comparison. I don't really remember exactly what I was trying to get into that. Whatever, but I did have a point, and then I kind of lost my train of thought. But if I remember it, I'll come back to it. But I feel like at this point, I really have reached a certain point where I feel like at this point, if I were to keep talking in this path, I'm just going to be repeating myself over and over and over again, and I can't do that. We're just going to be senior because this happens with the two of us. That we just.
Well, let's look at something like this film was actually the first mockumentary style film to get nominated for Best Picture Actor or an Oscar. Do you think that films like this deserve to even be in the running for that?
Well, I think it's interesting because to me that's the only really good part of the film is that first 25, 30 minutes. And if you watch the short film that's based on, it's just like a 6-minute short film where it's just that documentary style.
Alive in Joesburg.
Which I think it was nominated for Best Short Film
Johannesburg
as well. That also got an Oscar nomination. But I mean, I'm shocked that District 9 got an Oscar nom because just the rest of the film does not come close to holding up compared to those first 30 minutes. And especially doesn't hold up against the short film. I mean, it's great. I mean, it's like, I don't care how you tell your story, but just, it's like what Ebert said, where it's like, it's not what your film's about, it's how it's about it. And the first 30 minutes is like, it's a wonderfully told story through that documentary style. I feel like the film could have worked a lot better as a 90-minute film with just that style. And you could have lost all the action in the second half.
It wouldn't be nearly as impactful if you lost all of that stuff.
I mean, I think you could still have the character agency and all that, but you wouldn't get bogged down in the action scenes that the second half of the film happens to. So I mean, I would say like films like that, if they're told well, do deserve to get nominated for Best Picture and all that, if it's a good enough film. But District 9 was definitely not a good enough film for that.
I think it deserved to get nominated. I think that the Academy in general seems to favor the same kind of movies, like they're always into period pieces and true stories and yada yada yada. And I feel like they don't value creative genre films as frequently as they should. Um, I'm trying to remember what else was nominated that year. I think that might have been the first year that
Avatar.
they did. They had 10 nominations that year, 9 nominations, right? That was the
Yeah.
first year that they extended it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm glad that got nominated. I don't remember. I think Hurt Locker won that year, right?
Yes, Hurt Locker.
Didn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is a good.
I mean, I think I certainly don't think it deserved to win. But yeah, I mean, films like that are definitely creative and have interesting social commentary. I think yeah, I mean, give it an Oscar nomination. Why not? I mean, I think it's probably good enough to be one of the 9 or 10 best movies of that year. Certainly, I remember it.
I mean, the film only got nominated because it went beyond 5, and it was 2009 was also a really weak year for movies, as far as I can remember.
What else got nominated that year? Because I'm curious about that now.
I think it was like Up in the Air, Hurt Locker, Avatar.
Oh yeah, that all sounds right.
And I can't remember any other ones, but
hold on, I'm gonna find out what else was nominated that year. But I do remember.
I mean, like if District 9 came out last year or 2011,
it was
or 2007, it would just get left in the dust.
Right. Hold on a sec. I gotta find this really quick because I'm curious about this now. Hold on. 2009. Oh wait, this is 2000. Oh, hold on. These would be the 2010 Oscars.
Yes.
I searched 2009, and then it gave me all this wrong stuff. Because it's going to show that. Yeah, it was nominated was Hurt Locker, Avatar, Up, Precious, Blindside, District 9, Up in the Air, Serious Man, and Education.
It was a really weak year that year.
Yeah, it wasn't great, but I still think that I don't remember everything that came out that year. But sure, I mean, I would definitely give that a nomination. Maybe it wouldn't have occurred to me to give that a nomination just because, I guess stuff like that doesn't usually ever get nominated. But I think it's awesome that it did. I mean, yeah, there are better films. I think The Hurt Locker probably did deserve to win. Or I personally would probably have given it to A Serious Man. I'm a big fan of that movie.
That is a great movie.
But yeah, I mean, sure, why not give that nomination? It's fun. It's good to give genre films their due because they certainly don't by the Academy.
I mean, I feel like I would have rather give it a nomination. I don't know if I got nominated for film editing, but I feel like if out of everything it could have get nominated for, film editing is probably the only thing. Well, I mean, there's visual effects too. For its time, it was really well done. I don't think they hold up too well today, but
I think they hold up pretty well. I think they hold up very well.
It's the when you when I see this visual effects scenes for some of them, like the big mech suit thing, when you first see that thing, it's like it's clearly no one's paying attention to it. It seems like that was like a last minute addition to it.
What do you mean no one's paying attention to it?
Well, when you first see it in the film, it looks like it just does not look like it belongs there. It's like a little brighter than the room is itself. It's just kind of weird looking.
You're forgetting that the people who have it, I think it's the gangster dudes, right?
Mm-hmm.
The gangster dudes have it? Yeah. The gangster guys have it. And they can't use it. They have all of these alien weapons that they can't use. So they're just stashing away all of these guns that don't do anything for them. So you're forgetting about that. That's why it's just there.
I guess that's a valid point. Okay.
I mean, if I just found like a mech suit lying around and I found out that I couldn't use it, you bet your ass I'd find a way to get it back to my house and just keep it in my backyard or something awesome like that. That'd be fucking sweet.
I do just want to point out real quick that it was, in fact, nominated for editing.
Okay, at least that's good.
Sure, yeah.
As well as adapted screenplay, visual effects, and best picture.
Yeah.
I agree with two of those, I guess.
It's a good script. It's a good story.
The script is the bad part.
No, the script is great.
Again, it was a pretty weak year.
Exactly.
No, you're.
I love this. I love this movie, but it was a weak year.
Thank you. I'll give you that. It wasn't the best year. It wasn't.
How about
But
this
yeah.
question? Since this film only happened because the Halo movie fell through, would you have rather seen Blomkamp do a Halo movie?
I think it's interesting. I think visually he could do that game series justice on the big screen. Because when you watch this movie, this looks like, when you see on Facebook, they said, oh, someone made a 5-minute fan film in the, like the Half-Life universe or like the Portal universe. This film looks like those movies, but just 2 hours long, with the positive and negatives with that come with that. So I feel like, because you look at the weapons, they look like, when I watch this movie, like I feel like this story, these weapons and this mech and all that, would have been a great video game rather than a great movie.
I do believe that some of these weapons and the vehicles were all meant to be in the Halo movie.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not 100% on that, but I do
That's
believe
interesting.
like they are the battle rifles and warthogs for Halo.
Yeah,
that they just retrofitted.
Which they look like it, they
interesting.
sound like it. And I think, like, yeah, visually he would have done that story great, but I just think this, he wouldn't. I just don't think he could do the story justice, at least for the first game, because the first game has a great story to it, great survival story. But I mean, maybe it would have been just like District 9 without maybe all the heavy-handed apartheid, racism themes to it. So that might have actually made it pretty good. Like if it was just a straight-up action movie. But I don't know. Neil, like, he has a really specific style, and like I applaud his like originality, how he doesn't try to do sequels. He does like the easiest in the world would have been to do District 10. And studios would have given so much money, but he went on to go do Elysium. Not a great movie.
Don't forget, before you start talking about sequels, don't forget that he wanted to do an Alien 5.
Which would have been interesting. But I feel like I'd rather have Ridley Scott do it than Neil Blomkamp.
Are you kidding me? I would love to see Blomkamp do
I mean,
Alien 5.
Over like
would
a
love-
Prometheus sequel, yes, I would rather see that.
Yeah.
I just
Well,
like...
I know that Alien Covenant's supposed to be like a... I don't even know where it falls in the
I think
timeline. I know it's
it's
like a sequel to
Prometheus.
Prometheus.
Yeah.
It's a Prometheus
But
sequel.
it's
It's bridging
titled
the gap.
Alien, so it's...
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would still love to see Blomkamp do an Alien film. Not just because he has a grasp on visual effects, but I think it would give him an opportunity to... I mean, granted, I don't know like what he pitched. If it's closer to Alien, where it's a horror film, or Aliens, where it's an action film.
I feel like he would have done
but I
Alien
think-
style.
I probably closer to that, but I'm curious to know what his story ideas were, because I think I remember reading something about how he like pitched them to Sigourney Weaver and she liked it. Or he actually spoke with her in person about getting her on board, and she said she was interested or something along those lines. I don't remember all of it exactly. Just that it like was super close to happening.
No, yeah, I think like everyone was big on it. I think Ridley liked it. I think 20th Century
Yeah.
liked it. But it was more
And
that they had Prometheus, and then you have a Prometheus sequel, and then like an Alien sequel. You can't do them both at the same time. It's just going to be
Right,
confusing and weird. So I think
Right,
that's
I get
why it
that.
died.
But
Which is...
yeah, and I know that I'm guessing Ridley Scott was obviously they'll give the reins to Ridley because it's his franchise, which makes sense. I can't discredit him for that. But still, I would have loved to see what he could do within the confines of a pre-existing franchise.
That's a
not
good
just
point.
on a
It
visual
could kind of
level,
rein him
but
in a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think that based on how Elysium went, I was really excited for that movie, and it was a total letdown,
Mm-hmm.
and had like this really weird stance on like it had this really weird position on healthcare, which I thought was just that didn't make like the way that they presented it didn't make very much sense to me, and Chappie, I don't know what the fuck they were trying to do with that. That movie was
They were trying to sell PS4s.
that I guess so, yeah. That movie was a massive bust. So yeah, I think whatever he does next, I would certainly like to see him work within the confines of something else, a pre-existing franchise, instead of like, hey, you had like one really good original movie, do do more of that. I would love to see him do something else. Certainly science fiction. I don't know if I feel like he should have been hired to do like a Marvel movie by now or something like that. Just given how, not necessarily that he's the best director for it, but just the fact that given what he's done in his past. I mean, just look at just look at the guy who's doing Thor 3. He's just made a bunch of like goofy like indie comedies, and
In
they
New
give him the
Zealand.
keys to, and in New Zealand, and they give him the keys to to this giant multi-million-dollar action film. The fact that Blomkamp hasn't done anything like that, it's a little it's interesting. But
Well, I
also
feel
his
like
films aren't
it's
quite as
probably
good.
because Neil has too strong of a voice to take over a Marvel franchise. Meaning, like, not like, he has good ideas or themes or something like that, but like when you see a Neil Blomkamp movie, you know it's a Neil
it
Blomkamp
is.
movie.
Yeah,
Like with
sure.
the filmmaker with the strongest voice or the strongest style in the Marvel universe is James Gunn, and even then, that's not that he's not that much of an auteur filmmaker, at least visually.
Are
And-
you trying to say that he wouldn't really listen to what the studio
Yes,
would want to do?
kind of like look what happened to Edgar Wright, where he totally got like a lot of people say, oh, he left. I mean, I bet he kind of got fired right before
No,
the
I
filming
think he
started.
left.
I mean,
Uh,
I think it was one of
well-
those where like it was gonna go that way.
Yeah, it
Well,
might have
I-
been a hey, you might want to leave now.
Yeah, like it's just not working out.
You mean with Ant-Man?
Yeah, with especially with
I think-
Ant-Man, because you
I
know how
think
that
the thing
quick
about-
editing, the zooms, the style.
But I was just about to say, Ant-Man would be much better off as a one-trick pony instead, like outside of the rest of the Marvel universe.
Yeah, that probably would have been true.
And I think if they had, I mean, like the way that he makes films and the way that he writes films and everything, and his comedic timing, I would have killed to see him do Ant-Man. I think that would have been amazing. I think it would have turned out much better than it actually did. 'Cause it was basically just Iron Man 1 all over again. But I mean, that character would not have worked in the rest of the MCU if they had done Ant-Man Edgar Wright's way. Because I know that he wanted to do his own thing outside the MCU, and they were like, no, that's not what we're doing. Even though I definitely would have preferred to have seen that.
I mean, I don't know how James
but
Gunn
yeah,
got so
just-
lucky, but
You don't know how he got so lucky?
yeah, how he's able to do like almost his own thing twice now,
Because
And
he's so
probably-
good.
and he's probably gonna be able to do his own thing a third time now. While everyone
because
else
he's
is
so
kind of
good.
stuck to be
I
like,
mean-
oh well, if it doesn't work for if we can't put this kind of style into the other films, we're not gonna do it. With Guardians of the Galaxy, it's like it's totally its own thing. That's why I love that series so much because it's so
Guardians-
unique.
Guardians worked because it was one of like the three most critically acclaimed films in the whole MCU. Out of like, I don't know how many movies came before it exactly. However, like many thousands of Marvel movies have gone before it.
Yeah.
Since. I don't know the exact number. It was the most critically acclaimed. It made.
Well, I mean, even like before that,
No, but
before
just
filming,
Just hear me out. I mean, he totally, didn't really have to work super tightly within the confines of the rest of the MCU. Just kind of set up the Infinity Stones, and that's it. And that worked. And he had a great cast, and he had he built this great soundtrack that sold like crazy.
well, this is the
And- but
interesting
also-
thing about that
hold
is
on,
that
hold on.
okay,
But also, when he pitched Guardians 2 to Marvel, they just said yes.
Mhm.
Like, they literally gave him such a fucking good pitch that they just, gave him like a couple notes here and there, but otherwise, for the most part, like that pitch is what, we went and saw last night. And he did all the writing himself, and he did all of the storyboarding himself. And given the success of the first one, the critical and financial success, given how instantly recognizable those heroes were, going from like B or C or D list comic book characters to being like, A list in terms of movies. Um, I mean, most people would consider Guardians, their favorite Marvel film. Um, Given how insane the reception was to that movie compared to all the others, that's what got him, the Guardians 2 job right away. Plus, he didn't really have, he's not, like Kenneth Branagh, where he does like the first Thor movie and then he's got other things he's got to do, and let someone else do it. But I think James Gunn's case is a little bit different. I mean, just look at like Jon Favreau. I mean, like he didn't do Iron Man 3. I don't remember exactly why, but I'm guessing it had something to do with creative differences.
Iron Man 2 sucked.
Yeah, it wasn't great. But
well, let's say I just want to say about, like, I don't know how, like, with the first film, James Gunn was able to do the 80s soundtrack. Because I bet you, like, I don't know how he was able to convince Disney to do the 80s soundtrack thing. Because they probably
It
like
just fit into the story very
maybe.
well.
I mean,
Why.
wouldn't you think those two execs go, no, let's have them get kidnapped today so we can do all the today's hits or something like that,
yeah, if Disney,
or in the future a little bit or something.
yeah,
But I think-
Disney obviously would have liked to do that, but it just would not.
That's
not
very
fit
true.
into the story,
And I mean,
unless they went like super young with Star Lord.
yes,
well,
true.
remember that when he comes back to Earth, it'll be, assuming he comes actually back to Earth in Infinity War, he will be, an adult, and it'll be roughly present day. So
Yeah. We have about 10 minutes or so left. So let's go ahead and let's talk about Charlton Copley real quick. With him, this being his first picture, I think we can all agree that he did an amazing job in this movie.
Yes.
mhm.
Did you feel like he stole the show more, or were there other characters that really the movie was about them?
I would say he steals the show, and if I would ever recommend this movie, it would probably be more like, a lot of people say, oh, you gotta see this new Neil Blomkamp movie. I'll be like, well, you gotta see this movie because there's this actor that's amazing in the movie, who's gonna be a big star, and who kind of is. Well, I mean, I don't know if you can count him as a big star, but I mean, to me, he's made a great career. It's kind of like he's like the male version of Eva Green, where he's in crappy movies, but he's amazing in them. Like, even in something like Maleficent, he's kind of still enjoyable to watch. I mean, he's bland and boring, but, like, he's less bland and boring than everyone else is in that movie. With Free Fire, which I was not a fan of, he's the best part of that movie.
Oh, I thought Free Fire was fun.
He's
Free
the
Fire is an amazing movie. Let's
I
just
don't know if I'd say it was amazing, but I just I just
think-
had fun watching it.
I think that might be a coming soon. We'll have to talk about that one.
Yes, because I was not a fan of
could do
that one. Well, like, he was the best part of Elysium again. He was the best part of Chappie again.
No, it was not.
Yeah, he was.
There was nothing-
Those were not good movies, but he was pretty decent in them. And then, like, I mean, I don't know if he's getting, like, when he's not working with Neil, that he's getting that much work, but I don't know. I think he's a great actor, and he deserves way more work than he gets. He was even in what I think is kind of an underrated film, the 18 movie. He was great in that movie. And I don't know. I mean, like, that's the best thing that's come out of District 9 is Shalto by a mile. He's a fantastic actor.
I would actually agree that he is the best thing that's come out of it, because Blomkamp's career definitely hasn't, which is a shame. But I mean, he is the star of the movie, but also the villains are not the most memorable. They're just
laughable.
I do like the villains because I like what they represent, and I think it's not the kind of thing where it's like, we need a more sympathetic villain. We don't. It's fine. It's a corporation that's kind of faceless, and say what you will. You talk about the villains all day. I don't really care. But I mean, there's a guy who was in a bunch of CGI paint. No one knows who that is. It wasn't Andy Serkis. So I mean, I think that he's like um, he's like, yeah, I agree that he's the best thing to come out of the film. Um, However many, like 8 years down the line.
Yeah, it's been like 8 years.
I thought it was awesome in Free Fire. I think he's been awesome in just about everything I've seen him in. Um, he's just always got a lot of energy, and he's just really fun to watch. And I'm glad that at least I don't think he makes like straightforward, like dramas. I just like that he, makes a lot of goofy movies. Or if he's not or he like plays kind of goofy characters, in movies. He was certainly a goofy character in Free Fire, and um, that was fun to watch.
He's kind of, to me, I mean, I don't know much about his method, but he's kind of like Jennifer Lawrence, where like there's no method to their performance. They just do it. So it always seems like authentic to me. It doesn't seem forced. It doesn't seem like they thought about this for hours and hours. They just did it. They're just doing what they think is right for the scene. And I don't know, it's always wonderful and interesting and unique to watch Sholto act. Like I've never he has a similar voice with every performance, but I would never say he's done the same performance twice. He's always doing something new, and I really enjoy that about him.
For sure. All right. Well, how about final points, final thoughts, and give me a number.
District 9, it has great production value, especially for its budget. The first 20 minutes are great, and it has good intentions, but the film just doesn't hold up, especially 8 years after the fact. And the whole idea and theme and message gets lost in its action. So to me, it's like a 6 out of 10.
Okay. How about you, Josh?
I'd give it a 9 out of 10. I think it's I agree with a lot of what you said about like production value and for the budget and et cetera, et cetera. But I do think that it has really strong characters, a really strong script, a really strong story. I think it's a fantastic movie. It certainly held up for me when I watched it a couple weeks ago. So yeah, I don't really have any like glaring issues with it. Maybe just like small things here or there, but nothing, that really like pisses me off like Ducky. And I think it's I think it's an excellent hero's journey story, which I don't think we talked that much about, just because that was sort of like the inciting argument when we first started talking about the movie, however many years ago it was.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, I think it's pretty good. I like it.
All right. Well, that was our discussion about District 9 from 2009. Coming up, we might be talking about Free Fire, as it seems. And we're also still looking for other submissions, other movies. We want to know what you want us to talk about. So, give us your submissions, and I am Wilson T. Kirk, along with
Josh Duclos
and
Josh Weitzel.
And we will see you next time.